Nurse Jasmine Carter faced humiliation and doubt for years, mocked by colleagues despite her expertise. Dr. Blake and Dr. Harrison sneered at her, undermining her in front of patients and staff, their arrogance and prejudice on full display. But when billionaire Henry Whitman arrived in the ER in a life-threatening crisis, Jasmine's quick thinking and calm skill turned the tables, saving his life against all odds. Just wait to see how the very people who doubted her were forced to confront their own biases, and why justice and recognition finally prevailed. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as Nurse Jasmine Carter pushed through the sliding doors of St. Vincent's Hospital, her ID badge swaying gently against her uniform. Chicago mornings were always hectic, but today felt heavier, as if the city itself had pressed down on her shoulders. The halls were already bustling, orderlies wheeling carts, patients being guided to waiting rooms, monitors beeping softly in the distance. Jasmine inhaled deeply, letting the familiar scent of antiseptic and freshly laundered linens settle around her, grounding her in a world she had known for over a decade. 10 years she had spent here, caring for patients, running through emergencies, learning every protocol and procedure by heart, earning the trust of colleagues and families alike. But experience alone did not shield her from prejudice. As she wheeled her cart past the staff lounge, the sharp, mocking tones of Dr. Blake and Dr. Harrison cut through the morning noise like a cold wind. Their words were low, deliberate, but unmistakable. "Are you sure she can handle this one, Jasmine?" Blake's voice carried that calculated edge of superiority, a smirk tugging at the corner of his mouth. Harrison chuckled, leaning against the counter. "I mean, she's experienced, I guess. But you never know, right?" Jasmine froze for a heartbeat, the stethoscope around her neck feeling suddenly heavier, almost like a chain. She had encountered skepticism before, subtle questions about her skill, quiet whispers about her competence. She had brushed them off countless times. But this was deliberate, loud enough for patients passing by to hear, for young interns and nurses to catch the cruel undertone. It was humiliation served openly, packaged in a veneer of professional concern. Her chest tightened, a slow burn of frustration spreading through her. It wasn't just the words. It was the years of dedication she had poured into her career, the long nights on call, the patients whose lives she had stabilized, the lives she had saved. And yet, here she was, reduced to a punchline in a private joke, her skill and integrity questioned for reasons she had never signed up to prove. The injustice of it stung, sharp as a needle. She wanted to turn, confront them, demand respect, but she knew the halls of this hospital weren't a place for impulsive confrontation. Her professionalism had always been her shield, but inside, her anger coiled, relentless and simmering. She continued down the corridor, each step measured, her mind replaying the moment over and over. Her fingers brushed the edge of her cart, tapping lightly as though the rhythmic sound could contain the turmoil inside her. Jasmine's gaze fell on the patients around her, some drowsy from medication, others anxious about procedures, all relying on her calm and steady presence. She forced herself to focus, to redirect the anger into something constructive. Still, the sting of condescension lingered, sharp and biting, a reminder that talent alone did not guarantee respect. The hospital was alive with movement, but Jasmine felt the moment stretch, crystallize. The injustice wasn't abstract, it was personal, palpable, almost suffocating. She knew she couldn't let it define her, but she also knew she wouldn't forget it. Every snicker, every condescending glance, every insinuation of incompetence etched itself into her awareness. Her anger was no longer a fleeting emotion. It was a quiet, relentless force, urging her to prove, to excel, to rise above the dismissive voices around her. As Jasmine approached the emergency wing, she straightened her posture, letting the simmering fire within her settle into a focused determination. She had 10 years of knowledge, 10 years of experience, and 10 years of unwavering commitment. No whispered joke, no cruel smirk could erase that. Today, she would carry her anger silently, letting it sharpen her instincts and her resolve, readying herself for whatever challenge the day would throw in her path. And deep inside, she made a promise. Respect would not be demanded through argument. It would be earned through undeniable action. The emergency wing erupted into controlled chaos as paramedics wheeled in Henry Whitman, a billionaire tech mogul whose face was already familiar from news headlines and magazine covers. The monitors flashed rapidly, the warning beeps punctuating the air like alarms in a war zone. Nurses and doctors swarmed around the stretcher, their movements brisk, voices sharp with urgency. Jasmine Carter's heart tightened as she assessed the situation. Henry was having a severe allergic reaction, his breathing strained, eyes wide with panic. Every second counted. Dr. Blake and Dr. Harrison hovered nearby, their earlier smirks replaced by tense brows and hurried instructions. Yet the uncertainty in their actions betrayed them. They debated over protocols with hesitancy that was alarming. "Who's going to give him the epinephrine?" Blake asked, his voice edged with impatience. Harrison waved his hands in exasperation. "We need to stabilize him. Someone act now." But no one moved. Jasmine felt the familiar spark of anger flare again. Years of being doubted, whispered about, underestimated. This was the moment that tested everything she had built within herself. She took a deep breath, stepped forward, and spoke with steady authority. "I'll handle it." The room seemed to pause. Doctors who had mocked her competence just minutes ago now looked at her with incredulity. Blake's eyes narrowed, and he muttered under his breath, "Let the nurse play hero if she wants." The words stung, but Jasmine let them slide like water off steel. There was no time for ego here. Every action had to be precise, deliberate, and efficient. She moved quickly, checking his vitals, confirming the dosage, administering the epinephrine with hands that were steady despite the pressure. The seconds stretched unbearably, each one a test of nerve and skill. The smell of antiseptic, the rapid beeping of the monitors, the distant murmurs of the staff, all faded into the background of her concentration. For Jasmine, it was more than just a procedure. It was a culmination of years of dedication, sleepless nights, and relentless training. She recalled countless moments when she had silently proven herself only to have her efforts dismissed. Each careful motion, each precise decision was a silent declaration. She was capable, she was prepared, and she would not fail. Finally, the tension lifted slightly. The monitor stabilized, and Henry's breathing eased. Jasmine's hands released the syringe, and she stepped back, letting the gravity of the moment settle. Henry looked at her, wide-eyed, his voice soft but filled with genuine gratitude. "Thank you. You saved my life." The words struck a chord that cut deeper than any insult ever had. Around them, the doctors froze. Their earlier arrogance dissolved into stunned silence. The smug expressions that had accompanied their cruel jokes were gone, replaced by an unmistakable shock. They had witnessed firsthand the truth they had refused to acknowledge. Jasmine's skill was unmatched, her courage undeniable. Yet for Jasmine, the victory was bittersweet. The humiliation she had endured for years, the whispers, the smirks, the subtle undermining, had not disappeared. In fact, the pain of being proven right only under life-or-death circumstances deepened her awareness of how long she had had to fight for respect. She felt the weight of every insult, every glance of doubt, pressing against her like a reminder of the system that had tried to hold her back. Still, in that moment, amid the hum of the hospital and the fading panic of the emergency, Jasmine found something steadier, a quiet, unshakable resolve. She had saved a life while being doubted, mocked, and dismissed, and she had done it flawlessly. The world had seen her worth in the most undeniable way possible, even if grudgingly. And though the sting of injustice lingered, Jasmine carried a private, unspoken triumph. She knew her value, and no whispered ridicule could ever take that away. The news of what had happened in the emergency room traveled faster than Jasmine could have imagined. By the afternoon, the halls of St. Vincent's Hospital buzzed with whispered accounts of her quick thinking, calm precision, and life-saving actions. Staff members who had once looked at her with polite indifference now nodded with newfound respect, their eyes acknowledging what they had long suspected but rarely voiced. Jasmine Carter was extraordinary at her work. Even patients, families, and visitors began asking about the nurse who had saved the high-profile billionaire, their curiosity and admiration rippling through the hospital like an undercurrent of validation. Then came the moment that truly shifted everything. Henry Whitman himself, escorted by his aides, arrived in the staff lounge where the hospital team had gathered for an afternoon briefing. The room, previously filled with murmurs and tentative smiles, grew quiet as he approached. There was an aura of authority around him, an unmistakable presence that commanded attention, but his gaze was entirely on Jasmine. "Nurse Carter," he said, his voice steady but sincere, "I wanted to thank you personally. Your skill and calm under pressure saved my life today. I don't just mean the procedure. You acted with professionalism, with courage, and with the kind of dedication that inspires confidence in everyone around you." Jasmine's chest tightened, a mixture of relief, pride, and lingering tension settling within her. For years, she had quietly endured the condescension of colleagues like Dr. Blake and Dr. Harrison, who had sneered and whispered, undermining her with subtle cruelty that stung far more than words alone could. And now here was someone whose life she had directly saved, publicly acknowledging her worth in a way that could not be ignored or diminished. The reactions around the room were immediate. Blake shifted uncomfortably, his earlier arrogance now replaced by a flush of embarrassment. Harrison attempted a weak smile, muttering something about everyone doing their part, but it fell flat under the weight of Whitman's gaze and Jasmine's composed presence. Even the hospital administration, previously cautious in their support, stepped forward. They commended Jasmine, highlighting her decisive actions and exceptional judgment, leaving no room for doubt. It was clear the institution itself was standing firmly behind her. For Jasmine, a flicker of hope began to grow. It was tentative at first, fragile as a candle in a draught, but undeniably present. Hope that maybe, finally, she would be respected for her skill, her years of dedication, and the lives she had saved, not judged or diminished because of her appearance. Hope that the culture of quiet doubt and subtle bias might shift, if only slightly, within these hospital walls. Hope that her colleagues, some of whom had silently supported her all along, could now openly celebrate her contributions without fear or hesitation. The support of her peers felt particularly meaningful. Nurses who had once exchanged knowing glances now came up to congratulate her directly. "I knew you could do it, Jasmine," said Maria, a fellow nurse who had often been her quiet ally. "I'm glad everyone finally saw what I've been saying for years." Others offered smiles and nods that conveyed respect without words, gestures that felt heavier with significance than any official commendation. As she moved through the hospital that afternoon, greeting staff and quietly acknowledging the congratulations, Jasmine felt something she hadn't felt in years, the weight of injustice lightening. It wasn't gone entirely. Years of dismissal and condescension couldn't vanish overnight, but for the first time she sensed the possibility of change, the possibility of being valued for what truly mattered, her expertise, her dedication, her courage. The flicker of hope grew brighter with each passing interaction, each word of recognition, and each grateful glance from colleagues and patients alike. Jasmine paused for a moment outside the ER, her hands resting lightly on the doorframe, taking in the familiar sounds of the hospital, the beeping monitors, the hurried footsteps, the low hum of voices. All of it felt different now. Not just a place of work, but a space where her worth could finally be seen. Hope had taken root, subtle but persistent, and for the first time in a long time, Jasmine allowed herself to imagine a future where respect, recognition, and fairness were not distant ideals, but tangible realities she could fight for and claim. Weeks passed since that fateful day in the emergency room, and the memory of Jasmine Carter's decisive actions continued to resonate throughout St. Vincent's Hospital. Her courage in the face of life-or-death urgency had become more than just an anecdote. It was a defining moment that shaped the culture of the workplace. Administrators, inspired by her professionalism, offered her a leadership role in the ER, a position that came with responsibility over the very team that had once belittled her. For Jasmine, the promotion was not merely about career advancement. It was the acknowledgement of her skill, dedication, and integrity, finally recognized in a tangible and undeniable way. Dr. Blake and Dr. Harrison, who had previously mocked and undermined her, now found themselves in a new reality. They had to answer to Jasmine, follow her guidance, and respect the authority she had earned. The shift in dynamics was noticeable, their arrogance replaced with humility, their dismissive comments with careful consideration. It was not revenge Jasmine sought, but the quiet satisfaction of knowing that competence, courage, and persistence had claimed their rightful place. She moved through the ER with a calm authority, issuing directives, overseeing procedures, and mentoring staff, her presence both steadying and inspiring. But Jasmine's triumph extended far beyond the walls of the hospital or her official title. The moral victory was deeper, more profound. She had saved a life under intense pressure, demonstrating that talent and bravery could not be questioned or diminished by prejudice. The system, once indifferent and occasionally hostile, was forced to confront its own biases, and her actions became a benchmark of excellence. Colleagues who had doubted her, even silently, now recognized the dedication and skill she had carried for years. Patients and staff alike found in Jasmine a figure who exemplified professionalism, courage, and unwavering integrity. Her influence radiated outward, creating an environment where respect and competence mattered above all else. Stories of her actions circulated beyond St. Vincent's. Families of patients, interns in training, and even hospital visitors referenced her as a role model. Jasmine's quiet confidence, the way she handled emergencies with precision, empathy, and composure, inspired others to strive for their best. She became a symbol, not just of personal triumph, but of what could be achieved when resilience, skill, and character refused to be overshadowed by prejudice or doubt. Her leadership was a living lesson. Excellence could not be suppressed, and courage could not be diminished. As she walked through the ER, Jasmine observed the changes she had helped foster. Teams collaborated more smoothly, respect was openly shown, and young nurses approached her with questions and guidance requests, eager to learn from someone who had earned her place through both ability and moral strength. Every glance of appreciation, every nod of confidence, reinforced a truth she had carried silently for years. The injustices she had endured had not broken her, they had shaped her. Each challenge, each whispered doubt, had forged resilience and determination, molding her into a beacon of hope and inspiration. In the quiet moments between shifts, Jasmine reflected on the journey, the humiliation, the skepticism, the countless small instances of condescension. None of it had been wasted. Each had been a test, an obstacle, a moment to strengthen her resolve. Now she could see the broader picture. Her perseverance had sparked change, not only in her life, but in the culture of her workplace. She had proven that courage and skill, coupled with integrity, could triumph over doubt and prejudice. Jasmine Carter was no longer just a nurse doing her job. She was a symbol of resilience, a living example that dedication and bravery would always command recognition. As the sun set over the city, its light spilling through the hospital windows, Jasmine stood at the threshold of the ER, looking out at the bustling floors. She felt a quiet pride, a profound satisfaction, and an unshakable sense of purpose. The road had been long, the injustices many, but the triumph was complete. She had emerged stronger, respected, and inspiring others to follow her example. Her journey, once defined by struggle and doubt, had become a story of hope, courage, and the undeniable power of perseverance.